Welcome to the second video in the series devoted to using social media as an academic. In this second video, I'm going to provide you a very brief definition of what social media is, and we're going to see different types of social media. Social media are inexpensive and easily accessible digital tools. I'm not using the adjective free because even though you're not paying to use, for instance, Facebook or Twitter, the thing is that you need to pay a little price to have a mobile device and a broadband connection. So that's why even though you are not paying directly to use the social media, you are having some costs. The thing is that social media are very popular because they allow you to do plenty of different things. For instance, you can create an online identity, you can publish, share, and access any kind of multimedia content that is intended to non-specific audiences. By non-specific audiences, I mean that once you post something, a message, a video like this one, you don't really know who's going to consume your content. So for some contents, you are able to tailor the content according to an audience. For most of the content you are going to publish in social media, you're not really sure about what your audience is going to be. You can, of course, build personal relationships and you can engage in collective actions. These kind of features are very nice to describe, for instance, Facebook or Twitter, but they are also appearing in other social media platforms like blogs, even mailing lists, chat rooms, and forums. So the thing is that even though most of the major platforms we are going to describe in the seminar are commercial and centralized, there is no really need for that. Regarding their use, more than half of the world are currently using social media. Depending on your country, it can be much more than this. It can be three-quarters of the internet users or even more than 80–90% of internet users in your country. Needless to say, social media is not a monolith, and depending on how you approach them and how you analyze them, you're going to start distinguishing different kinds of social media. The first distinction you can make is depending on the content. I've said that you can publish multimedia content in social media, but the thing is that different platforms are focused on different kinds of multimedia content. For instance, you can have platforms mostly devoted to text. This is not the case of YouTube. YouTube is not devoted to text. But websites, chat rooms, mailing lists, blogs, microblogs, and wikis are mainly devoted to publishing big chunks of text. Of course, you can have video, you can have audio, you can have images, but they are mostly text-oriented. Then you have platforms that are mainly oriented to posting pictures and photographs. Of course, there is text. Of course, you can have an online identity. Of course, you can interact with other people, but they are mostly devoted to publishing images. The same applies to video, like this, YouTube, audio. We're going to talk about podcast regarding academia. You can publish and share documents, for instance, papers or slides. I discussed in the previous video about SlideShare. We're going to talk about the SlideShare again in the future. And of course, you can also share files. In academia, these are going to be mostly data sets. Okay? So that's one approach to classifying, to organizing social media, the kind of content they are going to host. The other one is the kind of activity they're going to be mostly focused on. Of course, in all of them, you can create an online identity. In all of them, you can interact with others. In all of them, you can create the social network. But depending on the platform, they are going to emphasize one kind of activity or another one. So there are platforms that are mainly oriented to provide an identity. We're going to discuss two of them here in this seminar. There are others that are oriented to create a social network mainly. Of course, you can publish text, you can publish videos, you can chat, but they are mostly oriented to create, to grow a social network. Others are focused on posting and sharing content. You can create a network, but that's not the main feature. And others are devoted to organize resources. And finally, you have other platforms oriented to engage in collaborative tasks. So if you take both dimensions, on the rows you have the content, on the columns you have the kind of activity, you might find different platforms appearing in different cells, some of them in more than one. So for instance, Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, they are appearing in different places. So for instance, Facebook and Twitter are really nice to publish text, to grow a network, to have an identity. But if what you want to do is to publish images while creating an online identity or just growing a network and sharing content, you have Instagram. But if that's not your point, if what you want to do is to organize resources and you're not really worried about creating an identity or interacting with others, you can use Pinterest. Regarding video, you have mainly three platforms that are very similar: YouTube, TikTok, and Vimeo. And the thing is that they're mostly oriented to posting, sharing, and maybe creating an identity. Maybe you are going to be the next YouTube sensation in academia. But they are not really well fitted to engage in collaborative tasks or growing a network. Mostly the same applies to podcast platforms. And for documents, we're going to discuss here mainly three: ResearchGate, Academia.edu, and SlideShare. And regarding the first two, they are very focused on growing networks and creating an identity. Not so much on sharing content like SlideShare, but you can do it, of course. And finally, you have Zenodo, which is one of the platforms that I'm going to discuss regarding posting datasets. Of course, you can have an identity in Zenodo, but that's not the point, or organizing a network. I have this other slide to discuss personal websites. You may wonder why I'm discussing personal websites here, and the thing is that I consider that there is a crucial need for you to have a personal website, in addition to have an online social media presence, okay? Not only because I have been using a personal website for 20 years, but because I think that it was the greatest advice that I received in all my academic life. Using a personal website, you may post and share content, basically text, documents, and files. Of course, you can put images, you can put audio, you can put video. But my recommendation here is that you use a specific platform for those contents. And you don't need to be worried about getting run out of space because of the video or the audio. And of course, with a personal website, you're also to create an online identity. If you're able to place yourself in a top position in search engines, your personal website is going to be a great asset. So we're going to discuss this in depth later. The thing is that along the years, different platforms have started to converge to each other. So at the beginning, they were very different, but in the end, you can basically do whatever you want in whatever the platform. So of course, I'm using here this video in a video platform, but you're looking basically at text and pictures. It's not the best way to share a slide deck, but the thing is that this is my easiest way to show a slide deck with my comments on it. The same applies to the platforms. You can post videos in Twitter. It's not maybe great, but you can do it. The thing is that even though you can do virtually whatever you want in whatever the platform, Different platforms are not totally interchangeable with other platforms. So there is a real need for you to know which platform or which platforms are the best to do different things. So we will discuss that later. And with this, I'm finishing this second video of the series, and in the next one, we're going to see how academics across the world are using social media for professional issues.